All right. So we're going to start. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our sixth webinar of the longevity series. Tonight, we're going to talk about the longevity diet and cancer, the importance of nutrition related to cancer. And this webinar will be recorded, so it will be put on our YouTube channel if you have to leave early or want to share it with a friend. Throughout the webinar, please put any questions you may have in the Q&A box on the bottom of the screen here. Looks like we may have some issues with the chat here again. I'm sorry about that, but all right. So my name is Frida. I'm one of the RD here at Create Cures Foundation, founded by Dr. Walter Longo. My background is all in nutrition. I did my undergrad in nutritional science as well as my master's, and now I'm working on my PhD in clinical nutrition. Looking at a nutrition intervention that is mimicking the same benefits that fasting has on the body and how it may reduce symptoms associated with a lot of chronic diseases, including cancer that we're going to talk about today. And I really strongly believe or know that through adequate nutrition and proper fasting windows, we can optimize our health span and prevent and even delay a lot of chronic diseases that are very common today. So today, together with Katie here, we are very excited to talk about cancer and to learn more how to both reduce the risk of getting cancer, as well as learn how to enhance current standard of care with proper nutrition and fasting, as well as for people who may already be diagnosed with cancer, as well as keeping cancer in remission.
Thank you, Frida. Wow, I so acknowledge over 100 people are taking their time out of their day to learn how to prevent and manage cancer. This is huge. Thank you all for being here. My name is Katie Reines. I was initially inspired to become a dietitian thanks to a plant-based eatery that was built due to a cancer diagnosis. And when I went to this eatery and the food was so good, I was like, wait a second, you can prevent and maybe even reverse cancer with food, with lifestyle factors, with nutrition. And that inspired me to be a dietitian and work at such an innovative clinic like the Create Cures Foundation. I'm so excited to be here. We're going to go over so many tips and important information to prevent a leading cause of death, cancer. I'm sure everybody out there, either themselves or maybe you know somebody, someone you love who's been diagnosed with cancer. It's a really scary diagnosis. And thank goodness there's a lot of research out there now that we can take hold of, take advantage of, and really prevent and reverse these diseases with nutrition and lifestyle. So let's go ahead and get into it. Previous webinars, if you have not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, we have lots of amazing webinars in this series that we're doing. And the first one was the longevity diet summarized. So we're going to be going over a lot of nitty-gritties with nutrition. Please go back and watch these webinars. It's going to answer a lot of questions, I'm sure, when it comes to how to plan your meals and what that might look like, as well as protein and longevity. Protein intake does have a lot to do with cancer growth. And in this particular webinar, we really dove into that and what your recommendations might look like. If you have not seen these, please go to the YouTube channel and watch them.
And then we had another webinar about fasting and mimicking fasting. We talked a lot about all the pros and the cons of each type of fasting. We concluded that the most realistic fast for most people is the 12 to 12 hour fasting window. We talked a lot about focusing on balanced whole foods meals. Then we had also a webinar on the longevity diet and or cardiovascular health, and really how to protect our heart through optimal nutrition. Then a few weeks ago, we had a webinar on the longevity diet and diabetes, a lot of about the causes and the risk factors associated with the disease, and again, how we can manage it and even prevent it with nutrition. So please check it out on our YouTube channel.
And we are offering some promotions if you are interested in an initial consultation with a dietitian at the Create Cures Foundation. we are offering 30% off using the code webinarcancer2022. Go to our website, clinic.createcures.org. This expires October 28th. So be sure to take advantage of that. And if you're interested in learning more, we have an incredible longevity masterclass, and this does count for continuing education credits. And if you're just interested to learn more, just go to the website. There's no code necessary, and that expires October 22nd. All right, everyone, open up your chat box. Before we begin, let's get to the root of the why. Why are we here? Why do you want to learn more about nutrition and cancer? Let's make this really crystal clear what your why is. With every single one of my patients, if we don't know our why, you're probably not going to make any behavior changes, right? We must get very, very clear. Is it because maybe you were diagnosed? Maybe you know somebody who's been diagnosed. Maybe it's something that I'm in remission and I want to stay that way. HER2 plus breast cancer, prevention, amazing. Metastatic cancer. So it looks like a lot of people here, they themselves have some sort of autoimmune condition, immune condition, or cancer diagnosis. So this is serious motivation to change, of course, having a diagnosis ourselves. And we can either be enlightened or frightened. And these diagnoses are quite frightening. So it's really beautiful to see. Also, a lot of people are here for prevention. We really want to prevent this from happening to us, seeing our loved ones go through this disease. Let's prevent this, okay? Thank you, everybody, for sharing. So today we're going to be going over briefly about what is cancer, foods to include, fasting and cancer, as well as foods to avoid, some lifestyle changes that can be made, longevity diet takeaways, and this includes lifestyle factors, right? And there will be a quiz at the end, so please pay attention so you can answer the questions correctly in the quiz. Some quick statistics about cancer. Did you know that America's second leading cause of death is now cancer? And there was a very recent article that was published August this year, August 2022, that about 50% of cancer deaths worldwide were shown to be preventable. They made a very bold statement that I think it was 44% or 45%, about 50% of cancer deaths worldwide are preventable. And if you ask me, I think even more percent than that are preventable. And they related this to smoking, alcohol use, and high BMI. There's a lot that we can do to take charge of our health, to take responsibility for our health, and to protect our DNA from damage. So it's really, really exciting to see that you all are here and that we have these statistics, and hopefully we'll see these statistics go down.
All right, thank you, Katie. So before we talk about the connection between nutrition and cancer, it is important to understand what cancer is and really define it. So first of all, we have trillions of cells in our body, and there should be a balance between the growth of our cells and the cell death. And unlike normal cells in our body, the cancer cells don't stop growing, and they keep dividing when there are enough of the cells. So they keep doubling, they keep forming a lump. This is called a tumor. They grow in size, and they may also spread to other parts of the body. So we see in this picture here on the top, we have healthy normal cells. The shapes, they look very fine, nice and round. Then on the bottom side here, the cancerous cells, on the other hand, the shapes are more abnormal. There's clusters of cells. The nucleus is also darker than the normal cells. So we do see a difference in how these cells develop. So I want to ask all of you, all right, so yeah, so if you think if cancer is preventable, yes, it actually is, but we're going to first talk a little bit about the causes behind cancer. So the causes of cancer is very complex, and there are many factors that contribute to if a person develops cancer or not. So first of all, we have the gene component of it. There are many gene mutations that are associated with a higher likelihood of developing cancer. So for example, mutations in the breast cancer gene BRCA, this is a gene that if you have mutations in these genes, the genes are not doing the job properly in terms of dividing rapidly and therefore can lead to cancer. Another big factor is our environment. We have pollutants, we have radiation, toxic substances that we breathe in. It may build up in our lungs and also change how the cells in our body are replicating. Lifestyle factors, this is a big one because it's all within our control, more or less, especially the nutrition part, which we are very passionate about. Activity levels, smoking, alcohol, even chronic stress as well, like it affects our hormones, which again indirectly may affect a person to develop cancer as well. So we do see there's a lot of contributing factors that are the causes. And although of course there's so much of this that are not within our control, so we shouldn't be like overly concerned all the time, you know, but especially the things we can control, it is important to focus on and do what we can do, and then whatever is out of our control, we cannot control. All right, so obesity, that's a big topic these days too, and we really do see the evidence is very clear that there is a big link between obesity and overweight and the risk of getting cancer. And why is that? So there's several factors. First of all, excess fat tissue causes, or it produces excess amounts of estrogen in our body, which are known to be associated with an increased risk of several cancers. Obesity or excess adipose tissue also means increased blood levels of a lot of growth factors, another risk factor as well. Obesity also means inflammation in our body. This causes oxidative stress, which again can lead to DNA damage in our body. Fat cells also produce cytokines that are called adipokines in our fat cells that can stimulate or inhibit cell growth as well. There's a lot of different pathways in the body. This can affect negatively in terms of also accelerating the rate of certain age-related pathways, again, which cancer is one of those diseases. All right. And then I do want to refer to one well-known study by Dr. Walter Longo. It's from all the way back in 2011. But I think it's very interesting because this study, they were looking at individuals with a syndrome called the Reines syndrome, very short people in Ecuador who actually has a defect in a receptor in the liver that is supposed to bind to a growth factor, IGF-1. And because these individuals are deficient in this receptor, they do not, first of all, they don't grow as normal individuals would. But what we also see is that they actually don't develop certain chronic diseases, although they're living a very unhealthy lifestyle. Maybe these individuals were drinking a lot of alcohol, they were eating a lot of fast food, but they were obese, but they did not develop cancer, diabetes, and other diseases, whereas their siblings and their family members who were living in the same exact household, but they were not deficient in this receptor, they did develop these chronic diseases. So obviously, most people are not IGF-1 deficient, but what we can learn from this study is that we can, by eating in a certain way, we can mimic this type of effect of really trying to suppress the growth hormones in our body that can prevent development of cancer. So I want to ask you, please write in the chat box, if you have a cancer gene in your family, are you 100% going to develop cancer? Let me see. No, 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 no. Great. Absolutely. And to the no is the answer. There's so much we can do, and Katie is going to talk a lot about what we can do to prevent developing cancer, even if you have certain risk factors.
Yes, I'm so glad you all answered no, because it can be scary, right? If we have a family member that has had cancer, if we have that cancer gene, there is still a lot that we can do to take charge of our health and whether or not we get cancer. So we're going to be going over how to prevent cancer using nutrition, using food. So lots of vegetables and fruits and plant foods have compounds in them that can really prevent cancer and protect our DNA from damage. Today, I'll be going over chlorophyll, antioxidants, and lots of different phytochemicals that literally means plant chemicals, vitamins and minerals, and of course, fiber. Fiber is an unsung hero when it comes to preventing cancer. So chlorophyll, the green pigment plants use to get energy from the sun. If you remember, I don't know, 7th grade biology, learning about how cells work, this is the green pigment. So anything that you eat that's green, this can be kiwis or kale or any plant that's naturally green is going to have chlorophyll in it. And what's cool about chlorophyll and chlorophyll containing plants, or at least leafy vegetables, not only do they contain that green pigment, but as you can see, when the green pigment dies off, they also have lots of different colors like lycopene or astaxanthin. These other pigments have been shown to be beneficial as well and act in different ways. So plant foods, like especially leafy vegetables that are green, they have a lot of micronutrients and antioxidants that are going to really be beneficial. What's cool about chlorophyll specifically is that it can help with the tiniest carcinogens that normally would be able to slide into our DNA and mutate our DNA. So our bodies, we're going to have a new body, a completely new body in 7 to 10 years, right? Our bodies are constantly dividing and we're constantly killing off old cells and creating new cells. And we're constantly having the potential to develop cancer. It's always a possibility, honestly. And if we're not protecting our DNA from damage, it's possible that that's going to happen. If we have chlorophyll in our bloodstream, if we're eating green vegetables, chlorophyll has the capacity to bind on to carcinogens that would otherwise slide into our DNA. The chlorophyll can actually make it so that that carcinogen won't fit in there and it'll get excreted from our bodies. So getting in green vegetables, I say to all my cancer patients, are you eating greens? Are you eating greens every single day? Treat this like a doctor prescribing you a medication. You need to be eating green vegetables, okay? There's research on this. This was back in 2009. Subjects injected with toxin, aflatoxin. Those who were injected with the chlorophyll derivative had much less of a spike of the toxin affecting them. This is crazy how it was so blunted when they had that chlorophyll in their system. And recently, this is 2022, this is comparing 2 different types of breast cancer. There's actually a few types of breast cancer, and the triple negative breast cancer, it's much more aggressive. It's much more likely to come back. It's much more difficult to treat. There's a lot of drug resistance towards lots of different types of cancers, but especially triple negative breast cancer. And researching these 2 types of breast cancer, it was shown that the chlorophyll treatment, and this is under a microscope, so more research does need to be done. However, noticing that the genes were really affected by the chlorophyll, even the drug-resistant genes. So the conclusion of this was that, wow, chlorophyll may be a very effective treatment at helping triple negative breast cancer and these cancers that are really aggressive. And a lot of people are aware of the word antioxidants. Oh my gosh, I know it's important to eat antioxidants. What are antioxidants? Like, what even is that? I think a lot of people don't fully understand, and I hope you get a much better understanding today. And I also want to remind you, if you have any questions, please ask in the Q&A feature, because I'm going to be asking you to participate throughout, and I won't get to your question if you ask in the chat box. So please ask in the Q&A so we can get back to your question at the end. Antioxidants are compounds that inhibit oxidation. If you've ever seen one of those fences that gets rusty, like anything that will be over oxidized, basically it rusts, it turns brown, it breaks down. We need oxygen, of course, to live. We can only go maybe a minute or so without oxygen. However, when we're having too much reactive oxygen species in our bodies, that's going to cause a reaction that really exacerbates inflammation, exacerbates aging. So oxidation is a chemical reaction that damages our cells. And lots of different colors and vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals, they act as antioxidants to protect our cell membranes from damage so that this chemical reaction doesn't happen. So things that can cause our cells to break down and to cause oxidation, this is things like chemicals like pesticides, cigarette smoke, chemicals in our products that we use, in our hair products, our skin products. The biggest ones are the cigarette smoke, the alcohol, blackened processed meats, Burnt toast. A lot of people love blackened foods. And reactive oxygen species, ROS, or advanced glycation end products, AGEs, these create free radicals, which basically makes it so that our cells break down and our cells are trying to steal electrons from one another. And it really exacerbates inflammation and aging. And as you can see from this image, this healthy cell that's bombarded with these chemicals and these reactive oxygen species and advanced glycation end products, it causes the cell to be super unhealthy, right? And if that's going on in our bodies, of course, our DNA just isn't going to be able to, be protected and divide properly. Damage to cell membranes in DNA, as I mentioned before, accelerated aging, inflammation, cancer, fatigue, if you get sick often. And it's not just chemicals in our food or in our, if we're breathing in cigarette smoke, it can also look like overexposure to sunlight. And it's actually quite normal to have reactive oxygen species. For example, if we're exercising, our bodies should be adequate and really, really good at protecting ourselves from damage, at protecting our DNA from damage. However, if we're really not taking in any or enough antioxidants, that's a really big issue, okay? And this is a great picture showing what it does look like to have that oxidation happen versus it not happening. Now, apples are fantastic. There's a lot of fibers and there are vitamins and minerals in apples. Apples are actually quite low in vitamin C, okay? If we add some source of vitamin C, like lemon, to the apple that's been cut to prevent it from being exposed to oxygen, the apple prevents it from turning brown. If you've ever seen this happening with an avocado or with guacamole, you want to put some lemon on there to prevent it from turning brown. That's because the antioxidants are preventing that reaction from happening, from preventing it from aging and being damaged. And that's pretty much a simple version of what happens to the cells in our bodies. So many. I could talk a whole nother hour or two going over every single vitamin and cofactor, mineral, all the different things. Vitamins A, C, E, cofactors, these all do act as antioxidants. And what they do is they sit outside of our cell membrane, some of them in different places in our cells and our DNA, but they'll be able to latch on, just like I explained about the chlorophyll, how it's able to latch on to the carcinogen and prevent it from getting in the DNA strand. Vitamin E hangs out on our cell membrane. It's a fat soluble vitamin, and it can glob on to carcinogens and prevent it from getting in the cell and preventing it from damaging the cell. And if the vitamin E wasn't present, if we're completely deficient in vitamin E, we're not taking in any sunflower seeds or any of these healthy antioxidant-rich foods, then those carcinogens for sure are going to affect the cells and are going to damage the cells. Here's a list. Maybe take a photo of this. I want to get in all the different colors, there's fat sources here. We got Brazil nuts, sunflower seeds, broccoli, cherries, lots of different foods. As you can see here, the only animal products that we recommend are fish, right? Fish, just 1 to 2, maybe 3 times a week of 4 ounces of low mercury wild caught fish has that healthy, beneficial fat, as well as some fat soluble vitamins that can be really powerful at acting as antioxidants. But the rest, besides the fish, is really plant-based foods that contain lots of naturally occurring color and fiber. And there's lots of these are different color pigments: carotene, astaxanthin, lutein, lycopene, resveratrol. If you've heard of why red wine is so good for you, it's really not that great for you. We want to decrease alcohol as much as possible and maybe get your resveratrol from the skin of red grapes is really where it comes from. And isoflavones in soy, the phytoestrogens, this has been shown to actually prevent, estrogen-related cancers like breast cancer or endometrial cancer. If you've heard of lignans being good for you, like the lignans in ground flax seeds, hormones like melatonin and vitamin D, they're amazing. Just getting in a variety of plant foods and ensuring that you're getting your needs met when it comes to your vitamins and minerals, these do act as antioxidants. A couple of studies I quickly want to mention: the EPIC study, over 450,000 subjects followed up for about 9 years. This showed that higher consumption of fruit and vegetable intake may protect against development of colorectal cancer, especially colon cancer. So getting in more fruits and vegetables is going to be helpful, of course. And if you've heard of the Nurses Health Study, over 66,000 women and over 42,000 men from the health professionals follow-up study showed that intake of about 5 servings per day of fruits and vegetables, that's about 2 servings of fruit and 3 servings of vegetables, was associated with the lowest mortality from chronic diseases, including cancer. So as I mentioned before, just like a doctor prescribes you a medication, think about getting that 2 servings of fruit and that 3 servings of vegetables. This truly is your medication. This is you got to do this every single day, protecting that DNA from damage, protecting your cell membranes from damage. And under a microscope, sulforaphane in broccoli decreased the number and size of breast cancer cells by up to 75%. And that was so significant. And please open up your chat box. I'm curious if anybody out there has heard of sulforaphane. No, yes, no, yes, no, no. So I take it. Wow, some people supplement with it. Yes, broccoli sprouts. Yes, broccoli sprouts. If you've worked with me, you're aware of this, but I'm excited that some of you don't know about sulforaphane. So when I did my master's thesis on plant-based nutrition and cancer, and I was mind blown the amount of research out there on broccoli. There's so much research on broccoli and cancer related to a specific compound in broccoli called sulforaphane. Broccoli sprouts every day. I love it. And it looks like some people are sending their chat boxes just sending to me and not to everyone, but I'm able to see, and if you're not able to see, somebody says broccoli sprouts every day. I love it. Sulforaphane has been shown to decrease mutated cell population by 65 to 80% in human cancer cells and reduce the size and number of primary mammospheres. And this is a big range, but by 8 to 125-fold and 45 to 75%. So this is amazing, right? This compound in broccoli has been shown to be able to kill cancer stem cells like this. Unbelievable. And daily consumption of 1 to 2 portions of brassica vegetables. So it doesn't have to be broccoli. Maybe it's kale or Brussels sprouts, something like that, reduces the risk of breast cancer by 20 to 40%. And this is saying possibly by altering the pathway of estrogen metabolism. So similarly to how isoflavones and phytoestrogens help to excrete excess estrogen from the body. So that's a big myth out there that soy and different phytoestrogen foods like flax seeds, they think that maybe that causes breast cancer. It's actually the opposite. Broccoli and cruciferous vegetables do a similar thing in their capacity to excrete excess estrogen from the body, which helps to reduce risk of things like endometriosis and hormone related issues, and of course breast cancer. And with this, the cooking method does matter. When it comes to getting in the sulforaphane, the enzyme that creates sulforaphane from broccoli gets released during the chewing of the raw vegetable. So really getting in a half a cup of raw broccoli every day, I think is going to be really helpful. Or broccoli sprouts. I know personally I prefer getting in sprouts. You only need about a 1/4 cup of broccoli sprouts. They're so easy to sprout yourself if you get the little seeds at home. Super cheap. You just soak them, let them sprout overnight, maybe a couple of days, and you'll have these long tails. They look like alfalfa sprouts, and they're full of sulforaphane. Another way is to cook and add the enzyme source. So if you prefer your broccoli cooked, maybe steam or boil your broccoli and then add another source of the enzyme. It's called myrosinase. And this enzyme is present in mustard powder or radishes. There's a few different food sources that you could sprinkle on top of your cooked broccoli. And if you want to cook your broccoli and not add another enzyme source, I love Dr. Michael Greger. He coined that hack and hold method where you get your broccoli crown from the store, chop that up on your counter, leave it on your counter for about 30 to 45 minutes. And that enzyme reaction happens, right? The enzyme is released and converts into sulforaphane upon the chewing of the raw vegetable. It also gets released when it's chopped, okay? So if you chop and let it sit, create that sulforaphane, the sulforaphane itself is able to survive pretty high heat, like steaming or boiling. However, it is so important to not blacken, as I mentioned before, do not burn your foods, do not fry your foods. Moist heat cooking methods are always going to be the best. So making a soup with them, boiling, steaming, even microwaving in there can protect our nutrition in the product rather than having it all be washed away with the boiling water. It's just heating up the water in that product. So if you think you eat healthily, but you eat a lot of dry heat cooking method foods, things that are baked or fried or grilled. Even if they're healthy foods, you could be taking in a lot of reactive oxygen species or a lot of advanced glycation end products simply because of the way that these foods are prepared.
Great. So I do see there's a lot of great questions. We will be going over them in the end. So thank you for all the questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about fasting, and as much as it almost sounds like the opposite of eating, all the great nutrients that Katie is talking about is still so important, but fasting, it's more about like the timing and like doing that in synergy with like the right nutrition. So we did a webinar on fasting. I highly recommend to watch that. But as we learned, fasting, or people fast for a variety of reasons. It could be for religious reasons. Maybe someone is preparing for a medical procedure or a blood test, or maybe it's for a weight loss strategy. There's so many different reasons, but you may also have heard that people fast in order to reduce the chance of developing cancer or improves the ability to fight the cancer for someone who's already diagnosed. So what is really happening is that in response to fasting, both or growth factors and glucose, IGF-1, and as well as other pro-growth proteins are reduced in the blood during the fast. And this is really slowing the growth of the cancer cells and at the same time actually protecting the healthy cells in the body. So we know that cancer cells feed on glucose, so sugar mainly. And if someone is consuming this at a higher level than normal, or in any like form of fasting, will reduce the glucose and basically starve the cancer cells, which is the goal, and also preventing it to continue to grow. So that being said, if someone has cancer and wants to do fasting, it is very important to consult with their oncologist and the care team, because fasting is not appropriate for all people. For example, people who have cancer cachexia and is continuing, which is a continuing loss of skeletal muscle, they have to be extra careful with fasting unless it's medically supervised, monitored. So that is very important. So although a lot of research has been done on water-only fast with together with current cancer therapy, water-only fasting is extremely difficult. First of all, if you tell a person, hey, they're already going through a very difficult time with the cancer, going through the therapy, and if you're telling them, hey, you're not going to be able to eat, maybe food is like the one thing they're actually enjoying, that number one, there's a lot of safety challenges with a water-only fast, with dehydration, weight loss, especially the muscle loss, which are all already happening in a cancer patient. So because of this, Dr. Longo and his lab team at University of Southern California developed a 4-day plant-based diet that is really nourishing the body while achieving the same benefits that fasting provides on the cancer cells. So it's basically mimicking the same effects of fasting, and the purpose is to induce something we call differential stress resistance, which is protecting the normal cells that are normally being harmed by the chemotherapy that someone is receiving, who have cancer or who may be receiving. But at the same time, the fasting is actually sensitizing the cancer cells to the chemotherapy. So basically, the healthy cells in the body are being protected from the chemo because of the fasting, while at the same time, the cancer cells that we want to kill with the chemotherapy are being killed or fighted. This fasting intervention is a more safe way to do a type of fasting, and there's a lot of current clinical trial going on, but we of course definitely need a lot more clinical trials, but the effects and the results are very promising. So it's a very interesting field to be in.
All right. Wow. If you could please open up your chat box. Which contains fiber? Amazing. Looks like everyone's saying the apple, not the apple juice. I'm so glad you're all aware. A lot of people don't know what fiber is. It's like, wait, Meat doesn't have fiber. Wait, what? Yeah, plant foods contain fiber. Fiber is the cell wall, really, of plants. It's the pectins in between. It's the skin of the apple. It's the matter that makes up the apple in between the apple juice, right? So when we're juicing, we're removing the fiber. And fiber, it acts as fuel for our healthy gut microbiota. And our healthy microbiome is so important for our immune function. Prebiotics are fiber. Fiber is prebiotics, which feed our good gut bacteria. All right. Probiotics, those literally are healthy gut bacteria. A lot of people think, oh, I can eat whatever I want as long as I take my probiotic pill. That's not the case. It's really important to feed our gut with prebiotic fiber so that we can actually truly fuel a healthy gut. Taking a probiotic is like a raindrop in a swimming pool of all of the bacteria in our gut. It's like, even if it's a 50 to 100 colony forming unit, like a high dosage of probiotics, it could for sure help, but in the long run, it's really important to eat plenty of fiber. Research shows that with every 10-gram increase of fiber in your diet, you get a 7% decreased risk of breast cancer. That's unbelievable. And most people on average get about 15 grams, only 15 grams of fiber per day. And the minimum recommendation is 25 grams. And eating a plant-based diet, it can actually be pretty easy to eat upwards of definitely over 30 grams of fiber. There's short chain fatty acids that get formed in our gut. One of them is called butyrate. And this has been shown to slow the growth of colon cancer cells. And this is a huge problem with keto and these carnivore diets nowadays. I've had a lot of patients who are like, oh yeah, I went keto, I was carnivore, and now they have colon cancer. And it's really because a lot of the high fat foods, they simply don't contain enough fiber. The foods that contain a lot of fiber, those are going to be our whole grains, our vegetables, our fruits, our nuts, our seeds, our beans contain lots and lots of fiber. And when we are restricting carbohydrates, we're also probably restricting fiber. Okay, so it's so important to eat a variety of foods that contain fiber. Like, I know if you've heard on the oatmeal box that oatmeal contains soluble fiber. There's lots of different types of fiber. So be sure to eat both cooked and raw vegetables to get those different types of fiber. Also, resistant starches. So if you've heard that beans, the magical food, it's because of the resistant starch. If people aren't taking in a lot of different types of starches and fibers, once they take in a lot of plant foods, their bodies are maybe you're going to have gas, maybe you're going to have bloating related to an inadequate population of microbiota in the gut. And resistant starch has been shown to be so protective and beneficial, not only at protecting us from cancer and building our immune system, but it can also actually protect against glucose spikes and things like that. So make sure to get in plenty of fiber, definitely at least 25 grams per day, and eat a variety of plant foods.
Great. So many important foods that can help us fight cancer. But what are some of the foods that we should avoid? So as a general rule, I always say at least processed as possible, the better it is. We want to avoid processed foods, specifically foods that contain a lot of trans fat and partially hydrogenated oils. We find these foods typically in foods that has a long shelf life, such as these chips here on this picture and certain peanut butter. And then we also want to try to buy organic fruits and vegetables, at least of this list here. It's called Dirty Dozen. It's 12 different fruits and vegetables that are specifically high in pesticide residues. So those, if you are going to buy organic fruits and vegetables, those are the ones we want to make sure are organic. We also want to try to steer away of artificial colors, as well as alcohol.
Wow, yes. So there's a lot. I'm glad that you mentioned when we talk about the Dirty Dozen, there's just a good rule of thumb is if you're going to be eating the skin of it, if you're going to eat the outside of it, it's a good idea to purchase it organic. And we are so blessed that we even have the capacity, I hope everybody out there has access to organic vegetables, is able to afford that. It is for sure better if you can't afford organic. It's better to eat the vegetable than to not eat the vegetables or fruits. However, it's going to be a good idea to continue to avoid chemicals and pesticides as much as possible. So some big takeaways: we want to fast overnight for about 12 to 14 hours. It's going to be a good idea to allow our bodies to kill off damaged and dead cells, to reset our metabolism a little bit so that we are really hungry when we wake up in the morning. Instead of eating all hours of the day, it doesn't give our bodies the chance to clean up house. Okay. So making sure that we're fasting from the last bite of food that we eat to the first bite of food we eat in the morning, about 12 hours is going to be a good idea. Be sure to watch our webinar on protein. If you haven't already, go to our YouTube channel. That's really, really important that you get adequate protein, but not too much. Just like Frida was mentioning about the Laurent syndrome and how people with less growth factor have been shown to not develop diseases like cancer. This has a lot to do with protein intake, and we really go over that in the protein webinar. So be sure to watch that. And eating a balanced plant-based longevity diet, making sure that your diet is mostly plants and in alignment with what people who live the longest and the healthiest eat. So some specific foods to include, of course, vegetables and fruits, quality carbohydrates. That means avoiding white flours and white sugars and highly processed foods. Smash fish, so that stands for sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, and herring. Some low mercury wild caught fish, 4 ounces twice a week. Be sure to include nuts, seeds, olives, avocado, getting in those essential fats. Moist heat cooking methods are going to be the best, as opposed to grilling or frying. Dry heat cooking methods. And then lastly, ensuring that you're taking in lots of different types of fiber. Prebiotic fiber, so important. This is, if you haven't watched the first webinar that we did, this is from that webinar. A lot of people get so overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to eat? How am I supposed to plan what I'm supposed to eat? And this is just a brief little visual meal plan of what a longevity diet might look like. And as you can see, it can actually be very satisfying, very delicious. And a lot of people, they're like, wait, I'm eating so much and I'm accidentally losing weight, or I'm accidentally making my cholesterol numbers even better. And that's because when we're eating healthy foods that are lower in calories and rich in fiber and nutrients, you'll feel full and you'll just be able to be energized and healthy.
All right, so open the chat box. We're gonna have a little quiz time. So our first question is, what is one food you will include in your diet that contains antioxidants? Blueberries, great. Acai, oranges, berries, vegetables, fruits and vegetables. Awesome. That's the homework until the next webinar, to include this every week.
Yes, amazing. Yes, avocados with an exclamation point. Perfect. I love it. Ooh, spices, yes. All right, yes or no question. Does the cooking method matter? Are fried foods just as healthy as steamed foods? Okay, yes, the cooking method matters. I'm glad that my second question, the answer is no. Yes, the cooking method does matter. I had an image there of French fries versus steamed potatoes. Of course, the steamed potatoes are going to be so much healthier and have so much more nutrition than the fried. And it's difficult to say. I saw somebody was asking a question about, what about roasted broccoli? Is roasted broccoli bad for you then? Not necessarily. Roasted broccoli is fantastic. What we're concerned about here is thinking about what type of oil are you using and what exactly is the heat? Is it blackened? So we want to make sure that our oils are able to withstand high heat. Like flax oil has got to be refrigerated, right? There's certain oils that become rancid and create reactive oxygen species at higher temperatures. And it's a lot safer, and you're going to get a lot more nutrition when things are kept at 212 or below, right? Even lower than that. So yes, good job, everybody. Cooking method does matter.
All right. How are you going to gain the benefits of fasting sustainably? So long term, not just one time, but to incorporate this into your lifestyle. that's something you may have to think about. And actually, during our fasting webinar, we talked about all the different types of fasting, because depending on your goals, your schedules, there's so many factors that play a role in terms of determining what is the best fasting window for you. So there's a lot of different ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of you are already fasting. Great. All right.
Okay. All right. A reminder, it's so interesting to see everybody's different answers for that last question. I'm excited to go over that in the Q&A a little bit. Reminder here, I know a lot of you, it sounds like we're either diagnosed with cancer, know somebody, want preventative steps. It's really, really important, especially if you're going to be incorporating a fasting regimen, to consult with a professional and making sure you're doing what's optimal for you when it comes to cancer. So this 30% off using the code webinar cancer 2022, would love to get on an initial call, making sure that you're set up for success and feeling really, really good about your nutrition. This expires October 28th, 2022. And of course, the masterclass as well, no code necessary, and that expires October 22nd.
All right, so before we start our Q&A session, today again was our 6th webinar of the longevity series, and our next one will be in October the 10th, same time. And we also are going to have a holiday special in November, where we're gonna talk a lot about how to still stay on track during the holidays and still reaching your health goals. So mark your calendars.
Yay.
Awesome.
And now it's time for the Q&A. So I'm just now, if you have questions that you ask in the chat box, please, I'm going to be referring to the Q&A feature. And yeah, Frida, would you like to start with the first question?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions is how to balance the need for higher protein among the elderly in order to maintain muscle versus the desire to keep IGF-1 low to resist cancer. Yeah, that is a great question, because we know as we get older, we usually actually recommend a little bit higher protein intake because there is a increased loss of skeletal muscle. So again, it depends on a lot of like personalized factors of your weight and any conditions you may have. So that's why we always want to consult with a dietitian to give a personalized recommendation. So we do recommend a little bit like 0.8 grams of protein per kilograms of body weight for 65 and plus individuals. So yeah, for that one.
Yeah, that's a great question. Are children with poor diets like fast food, junk food, added sugars, high risk to develop cancer? Yes, they definitely are. It's actually really sad to see that more low-income communities are definitely more likely to develop chronic disease, including cancer. Yeah, that's a good question.
And then you mentioned about growth hormone and cancer development. Does it mean that patients on growth hormone therapy have high risk of developing cancer? So we never want to say that just one factor is causing the cancer, because it's very complex. I know there are some research that indicates that if you do a lot of growth hormone therapy, it could be a risk factor of developing. But again, sometimes for certain individuals, maybe they need that therapy for something else. So it depends on the benefit, if the benefits outweighs the potential risk with it as well. So it's all taken into context, but good question. And then there's a question about fish, how fish affect IGF-1 versus animal products. So I know that meat affects, or certain animal products affects the IGF-1 more than, for example, plant protein and also fish. So that's why we are okay with recommending fish.
Yes, sorry, I had a little technical difficulty there for a second. Let's see.
Yeah, there's some questions about cooking methods, like air fryer cooking method. Does that promote carcinogens? Yeah, Katie, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. When it comes to pressure cooking, that's a moist heat cooking method, although it does get very, very, very hot. That's not going to cause a reactive oxygen species when it comes to really, really drying out the product and heating up the oils that could become rancid. There's so many questions. I'm like trying to read them all and seeing which ones I can answer the best. But when it comes to different cooking methods, the best ones are for sure the ones that are going to contain some water content. And air fryer. So as far as air frying, this is going to be a little bit better than a deep fry, right? If you're having a little bit less oil, air frying is going to be a good idea. But at the end of the day, just like with a microwave, I think it depends what you're putting in there. So things like cheese and meat, these are going to, when they're blackened, especially when they're cooked at high heat, these create so much more, like significantly more reactive oxygen species and free radicals than if you were to put a potato or some veggies in there. Okay, if you put tofu, vegetables in your air fryer, it's significantly lower risk of cancer than if you were to put in there chicken or cheese. Okay, so that's a really great question.
I see there's a question about if you can drink coffee when you're doing any type of fasting. If as long as it's black coffee, it's okay with a little bit of coffee. It won't interrupt the fast as long as it's no added calories into the coffee. It's still a stimulant, so we still want to not have excess caffeine, but a little bit is okay. And then there's a question about what is the recommended number of hours to fast on a daily basis, 12 to 13 versus the 16-8 method. Again, it's a little personal preference. We recommend the 12 to 14 just because it's more realistic. People may tend to overeat if it's a shorter eating window because you're kind of like making up for the time you didn't eat and you're extra hungry. But again, it also depends on what you're actually eating in that window. So again, taken into context.
Yeah, with 16-8, it's just as far as the mass majority of people, we want to get out of this feast or famine mentality where you're really, really, really restrictive. We want to think of something that's truly sustainable for most people. And there's also been research that gallbladder issues can result if we're fasting too much for too long. It's going to be easier for most people to eat healthy foods more often, like more spread out rather than such confined. What were the two questions? Oh, this plant-based diet, how much of it needs to be raw or not exposed to heat? I think it's a good idea to think about getting in both. Both raw and cooked vegetables are important. In fact, the lycopene in tomatoes is more readily absorbed when the tomatoes are cooked or in tomato products like tomato paste or tomato sauce on your pasta. There's more readily available lycopene there than in a raw tomato. Versus with broccoli, right? If you eat raw broccoli, you're going to get more sulforaphane than if you eat cooked broccoli. So getting in both is good. And with carrots, the raw fiber in carrots is so great as prebiotic fiber. However, because in a cooked carrot, because the fiber is broken down, it actually makes the carotene and the vitamin A a little bit more readily absorbed because the fiber can prevent absorption a little bit of those nutrients. So getting in both cooked and raw carrots is a good idea. Also mushrooms, the beneficial properties are more readily available when they're cooked. It's just interesting. So just get in both, all right? And then what about smoothies? Do they contain enough fiber? I think smoothies are fantastic. The only issue I might think of with smoothies is that they're so easy to just chug a lot of calories. So for my patients who have trouble getting in enough calories or who have trouble just fitting in healthy meals throughout the day, they're not about to sit down and eat a salad, having a green smoothie, making sure it's balanced, right? Put some chia seeds in there, put some almond milk, some greens. Don't just put in apple juice and pineapple and bananas in your smoothie. It shouldn't just be all fruit. Make sure that there's berries and greens and a good source of healthy fat in there as well.
And then there's a question about juicing carrots and greens, because this is often recommended for like cancer treatment and usually in very large volumes. That's a good point. And I do see this is often recommended. And in the end of the day, your body can only utilize a certain amount of vitamins and minerals. So sometimes it's a little too excessive like recommendation. It's like going so extreme in versus having a little bit of all the different nutrients we talked about today is better for the body instead of focusing on only like, yes, we do have strong research that vitamin C can protect against cancer, it doesn't mean that it helps to have like thousands of milligrams every day, because your body is going to pee out all of it. Like, I mean, after it absorbs what they can utilize. So that's often with juicing, instead of eating 1 carrot, maybe you have 10 carrots in the juice and you can't really get all the benefits out of it.
Yeah, actually, I really quickly want to piggyback on there that it's actually, I've had patients where it does exacerbate cancer growth drinking a lot of carrot juice, because carrots, they are, when you take away the fiber, it can cause a blood sugar spike, right? It's pretty high in sugars, actually, carrots are. So being mindful of that, and that's really individualized. If you are doing a lot of juicing or curious if that's healthy for you, I'd love to meet with you to make sure it's not unhealthy.
Exactly. And then there are a lot of juices, on the other hand, that are lower in sugar. So if it's more vegetables and green based versus a lot of like apples and carrots, which are higher in sugar, you can still make a more low glycemic type of juice that can still have a lot of benefits. So it always depends on the ingredients. A juice or a smoothie doesn't mean anything unless we know what's really in it. And then there is a question about carbohydrates and insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is caused by having a prolonged spike of blood glucose over longer time. So again, the carbohydrates we recommend are, most of them are, or they are low in glycemic index, which means that they are lower in sugar. So all carbohydrates are not the same.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly, all carbohydrates are not the same. That's like, I want to shout that from the rooftops. If one normally eats at least 50 grams of fiber daily, will green juicing in addition be beneficial? I would say yes, making sure that that's going to be mostly like greens and maybe some lemon, some ginger, some herbs in there, maybe some parsley, making sure that green juice, it can look green and be mostly apple juice. And that's not going to be helpful, right? So making sure that your green juice is really mostly greens and little to no fruit in there, okay? Any advice regarding caffeine? When it comes to caffeine, I personally am one of 10% of people. I have the genetic, I'm a slow metabolizer of caffeine. So for me, caffeine stays in my system for over 30 hours, and it gives me a lot of the shakes, anxiety. I get a terrible crash from it. It takes me some time to recover, even from having too much like dark chocolate, that kind of thing. When it comes to caffeine, most people do benefit a lot actually from things like coffee, and it depends the caffeine source. Just like not all carbs are the same. If you're having like caffeine pills or 5-hour energy, that doesn't have any antioxidants compared to matcha, green tea, even like really high quality coffee, that there are polyphenols in there. There are beneficial properties in there. I would recommend something like matcha, because the green powder itself, not only does it have that chlorophyll, that green color that I was talking about before, but there's an amino acid called L-theanine that can help to blunt any jittery, like anxiety that's caused from caffeine. So matcha actually has a more slow, steady, sustained release of caffeine, whereas coffee can cause a real spike and a crash. I don't know if you want to add anything about caffeine.
No, I think we're actually running out of time, and I still see there's so many questions left, but after the webinar, we send out a survey. So if you put your email there, we will answer all the questions that are remaining, because we will save them all. So we will get back to you, because there's still so many.
Yeah, and especially I see a lot of specific questions.
Yeah.
Please send us an email, inquiriesclinic@createcures.org. Would love to get in touch and help you on an individual basis. Seems like people have a lot of individual questions. So
yeah, thank you so much everyone for attending and all the great questions.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Go eat your vegetables. Have a wonderful night.